I got into snowboarding when I was about 16 or 17. Before that, though, I was very much like a good Indian boy. I made the decision around 20 to stop going to church. Still identified as a Christian, but that's also at the same time when I was in the skateboard, snowboard, lifestyle, fashion industry. So over time, you stop going to church.
Yeah.
You're not really involved with any of those things. And the community very much wasn't Christian. And so I kind of just drifted for a long time. Once again, identifying as a Christian, but not really living in a way that would be in accordance with being a Christian. What I've seen is when creativity in the church becomes a commodity, then the person that's behind the creativity often gets ignored. I think with creatives and Christian creatives, they have the opportunity to reach people in ways that, a pastor from a pulpit can't.
Yeah,
To amplify the message. I don't think we are that innovative and awesome. The only creative that there is God. The only creation event that has ever happened to make something out of nothing has come from God. So that should take the pressure off of all creatives, because everything that needs to be created has already been created by the Creator.
Yeah.
So what we're here to do is really be His hands and feet and take the creation that He's already given us, all the inspiration He's already given us. We just need to steward that well. So my challenge would be, don't feel the pressure to create, feel the pressure to curate and to grow in your inspiration so that you can actually lead people into a place of worship. You can lead people into a place where they can have an encounter with God.
Hey, welcome to the Live Full podcast, where we talk about all things faith, family, and living fully the life God wants for you. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about how communication, creativity, and faith intersect in our lives. Now, my guest today is a friend of mine, and he's none other than Sam. Hey, Sam, welcome to the show.
Hey, Gladys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, Sam and I, we actually recently just got to know each other, right? We met each other at a conference last year in October, so it's about a year since
Just about a year, yeah.
met.
Yeah.
Just about a year that we kind of got to know each other. And basically, my husband and I, we were there, and I think we just kind of clicked and got along. I don't know, we were fast friends. And ever since then, Sam has visited Singapore several times where we've hung out, and now he does a bit of work for our church. And so we've gotten to see him a lot more, which has been fun. We've had him over at our house too. That's been great. Yeah, we're going to keep this friendship going, and hopefully one day I'll get to meet your beautiful wife and your son. So you can tell us a bit more about yourself first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really the best at intros because I don't like talking about myself much. It's like the classic creative thing, you just sit in the background. But yeah, my name is Sam. I'm from Vancouver, BC. I'm part of a great church here led by Pastor Justin Reimer called Vivid Church. And yeah, I'm the creative director at Vivid. It's a full-time volunteer role that I kind of sit in. And then I also run my own creative agency, partnered with Justin once again.
Yeah.
So our lives are very intertwined with the church and the business and everything.
Yes.
And so I run my own creative agency. That's kind of my full-time role. I'm married to my wife, Barbara. We've been married for 7 years now. We just celebrated 7 years in September.
Congrats.
And we have, thank you. Yeah. And then we have a 3.5-year-old, almost 4-year-old boy named Elias. Although he would say it's Elias in Spanish.
Depending on which language you want to pick.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, awesome.
So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell, yeah.
Yeah, well, a very cool thing about you, though, that maybe you can share a bit more is your background. Actually, you have like, I don't know, it's like a professional snowboarding background. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about that before you entered into the creative industry.
Yeah, not professional. I don't want to give anyone the wrong idea, but definitely competitive.
Okay.
So there's different levels of like professional, I guess you could call it. But you're a sponsored snowboarder as a kid. I got into snowboarding when I was about 16 or 17. Before that, though, I was very much like a good Indian boy,
Yeah.
Very studious, very nerdy, wore collared shirts to school and stuff like that.
Yep.
So
Harvard, right?
Exactly. It's like life goal from the age of 3 years old was he's going to become a cardiologist. That's the plan.
Yep.
so that's kind of what I grew up with and grew up in. And then in high school, I enjoyed sports and stuff, but it's very much like a conflict of personalities. My parents really wanted me to be focused on studies. I feel like that's probably understandable in the Singaporean context.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
and I wanted to be not focused on studies. And was really into music and skateboarding, snowboarding, fashion, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So um, it's almost like I was living two lives. But I went to university after high school and got my degree in cell biology and genetics, of all
Mm.
things, because the plan was still very much med school and
Yeah.
medicine. Um, but coming out of university, I got the opportunity to work with the skate and snow brands that I used to kind of ride for.
Mm.
And kind of get into the industry in a big way. So, I had what we call rep flow.
Yeah.
And so I would get some gear from some of the reps. And then that turned into, after university, a position after an internship in marketing and data entry, really. It was just my foot in the
Wow.
door.
Mm.
Um, and that opened my eyes to the world of business. Something I'd never really been exposed to before. My parents didn't really let me work when I was in high school. It was like only school, nothing
Yeah.
to distract you from school. So,
Sounds like a
um,
Singaporean family.
yeah, very much. I think culturally, I mean, Indian family is very similar. So they were locked in, and they're both medical professionals. So that was the only option at that time. Um, but that opened my working in the skate and snowboard industry kind of opened my eyes into business and what the
Mm.
business world was like. Obviously, it helped that it was in line with all of my hobbies.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I did that for a few years. My background's kind of all over the place. It's very eclectic. But around that time, that's when I left church. So I grew up in a Christian family, very devoted Christian family, very, go to church every single Sunday. There was no questioning it. Got involved with serving at a very early age. My parents were always serving. I was serving by the time I was 12. When the church that we went to when we moved to Canada, they had the overhead projectors.
Mm-hmm.
So you had like the words printed out on the transparency and the
Yes.
worship leader would like slide it.
Yes.
Um, and then we
I
got
remember
this
those
cool
dark
new
days.
yeah. And then our church got this cool new technology called a projector.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the average age of the people in the church was 65, and
Wow.
it was a dying church in the city.
Yeah.
Um, and there was three kids. I was one of them. And I
Mm-hmm.
was 12, and someone came up to me and was like, "Hey, would you want to learn how to run PowerPoint?" And I was like, "Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sure." Because at that time in that church's history, there was no kids ministry. So
Yep.
I was like, sure, might as well do something. So I learned PowerPoint. I would create the slides every week. I would run PowerPoint from the front pew every single week. Um, my dad would be doing sound every week. And so we were just
Yeah.
very involved from a very young age. And then some people on the worship team taught me how to play guitar. So then I started serving on worship team at the age of like 14.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, when I was a youth, once again, the kids ministry at that point of the church, as it was rebuilding, they started a kids ministry, but then I was a teenager, so I wasn't the age for a kids ministry anymore. And then by the time I got out of my teenage years, they started a youth ministry. So I was always like one step outside of the programs that they were
Yeah.
starting for all the different ages. Um, and then in university, I kind of just the first couple of years of university, I think I decided that maybe church just wasn't for me because I was serving in all these different areas, and involved at a very high level. Our church went from at that time one service to three locations and five services.
Yep.
And so I would be there from 7 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Um, people talk about like the pastor's kids experience of like sleeping in the pews. I feel like I had that experience without being a pastor's kid. um,
Yeah.
but at the end of it, I found like I just didn't have any community. Didn't have
Mm.
any friends. Obviously, always being in the wrong age range for as the church was growing,
Yeah.
didn't really help. So I didn't have peers. A lot of people that I knew ended up leaving the church and going to other churches. I ended up getting to 20 years old and feeling like I've been at this church for almost 14 years now and I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
Um, so
You're
what's the point?
serving at such a high capacity too.
Yeah. Serving at a high capacity. We were there my family was a huge part of the rebuild of the church, gave very generously. And so I was seeing all these things and I didn't see the fruit
Yeah.
of it, at least in our lives. Obviously, there was fruit in the church and how it was reaching the community because it was growing.
Yeah.
Um, but on the personal level, I didn't really see what we were doing really and what the result was. So I made the decision around 20 to stop going to church. Still identified as a Christian, but that's also at the same time when I was in the skateboard, snowboard, lifestyle, fashion industry. So over time, you stop going to church.
Yeah.
You're not really involved with any of those things. So
And your
I kind of
community is different too,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yep.
And the community very much wasn't Christian. And so I kind of just drifted for a long time. Once again, identifying as a Christian, but not really living in a way that would be in accordance with being a Christian.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I did that. And in that same time, I did quit my job eventually to go to med school to finally, all the pressure from the family finally kicked in. I was
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm just going to make good on it and try to go. I, had a few interviews, got accepted, and then just had to have the real conversation with my parents at like 23 years old or 24 and say, this is just not what I want to do with my life,
Mm.
which is going to be hard for you to understand. Um, I want to stay in business. I don't know what that looks like. And with them both being in medicine, they didn't really have any sort of guidance that they could offer in that world. Aside from, well, if you're going to stay in the business world, then you need to have some sort of professional designation,
Yeah.
um, which then led me to accounting. Um, I don't know
You've really
why, because
tried
it's
everything. Yeah.
everything. Yeah. So I did all the
Everything.
CPA work, did the coursework. I started working at a tech company. Um, Actually, let me backtrack a little bit. Before I started working at the tech company, while I was still in school for accounting, um, I was hit by an SUV while I was skateboarding.
Mm.
And that kind of abruptly put a stop to a lot of the things that I was involved with.
Yeah.
A lot of the friends that I thought I had, they all disappeared when I didn't have much to offer.
Yeah.
And so the community that I thought I had with skateboarding and snowboarding, even that I had built over the course of a decade, disappeared overnight.
Yeah.
Um, and I realized that regardless of what I was doing, I just didn't have that sense of community that I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so in that process of not being for a while, I wasn't able to walk. I wasn't able to work. A lot of other stuff was happening. And so after about a year of that, I feel like I really had a wake up call and was like, I got to do something. Like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Um, and so I kind of dragged myself into church um, in 2015 because I was like, well, I've got nothing to lose. I might as well check out church. And one of the guys that I knew from snowboarding, his dad was a pastor of a church in
Wow.
Vancouver.
Yeah.
So and they had an evening service. So, I love that. No early morning wake up. So
Yeah.
went to the evening services for a little while um, and started at least making Sundays more regular while I tried to figure out everything else. I was working at this point, I started working at a tech company. In customer success and design. So at this point, I was a self-taught designer. I just tinkered with the software, hadn't really, done anything serious in it. Um, but for about a year, I hopped around from church to church in Vancouver, trying to find a
Mm.
fit. But the experiences that I kept having were the exact same experiences of when I was growing up, where it was just like, oh, you play the guitar, you can jump on the worship team right away. Let's get
Yeah.
you in. Okay, cool, you're on team now. No one talks to you. Don't have
Yeah.
friends. Hard to like break into the circle of friends. So I had a lot of acquaintances, but no real friendships. Um, to the point where like after about a year and a half, I found myself thinking, maybe church still isn't for me. I feel
Mm.
like I'm more dedicated to my faith, at least at this point, to like live in accordance with my faith. But
Yeah.
um, what's the point of going to church? Like what I feel church should be and what I'm finding at church are completely different things.
Yeah.
Um, and then about 3 weeks into thinking that and stopping my involvement on Sundays with church, someone told me about Vivid's startup party. And so I begrudgingly showed up and just to see what it was like. I think I had kind of resolved to myself that I was going to not like it. I'm like, I'm just
Yeah.
not going to like it, but I tried it and I'll just get on with my life. Um, and I met Justin and it was kind of like unlike anything I had
Yeah.
experienced before, like just a normal guy, not
Mm.
talking like the pastors that I had encountered in the past, not kind of aloof or distant or all that kind of stuff, like very personable.
Mm.
Um, and they were planting the church location in my neighborhood. And at this point, a week after I met Justin, I got laid off from my tech job. So I texted him, I'm like, hey, I got nothing to do, nothing but time. Um, would love to grab a coffee. So him and I met for coffee. And little did I know that that was going to be like the kickstart of the path that I'm on today. But yeah, that for the next like 2.5 years, I saw him every single day and was able to like pick his brain about things. I think 3 months
Yeah.
into knowing him, he's like, "Hey, I'm going to Singapore to speak at this church at a youth conference for a church called Victory Family Center. Do you want to come with me?"
Yes.
And I'd known him for like 2.5 months. I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Why wouldn't I go overseas with a guy I just met?" And
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, and that was I think your first encounter with like our church, I think, or Singapore in general. But we never
yeah,
met then, right? We only met last year in Vancouver, which is where you're based
correct.
right now. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Yeah,
But I mean, Pastor Justin's an incredible guy. I've met him too, and just big personality, big hearted. I mean, all around great guy. And maybe you can share a bit more about how community like is important actually, how that has impacted you. Because I think for a lot of even younger people in church these days, community is a big part of why they would stay, serve, and maybe how can churches do that a bit better?
yeah, definitely. I think it's primarily for me, it was twofold. One was finding community. But with Justin, it was kind of that personal relationship. I think that mattered a lot to me, which started this journey of me resetting my mindset around pastors in general. Because for a long time, I carried a grudge, I think, against all
Mm.
pastors. I'm
Yeah,
like, they're all the same. Um, but over time, that's kind of like, I think with Justin's grace, it's kind of fallen off step by step, like year by year. I see that. Um, Even to the point where like being involved in church in the level that I am, I'm like, oh man, I'm kind of in that world now. That
yeah,
what I completely hated maybe
yeah.
even 8, 9 years ago. Um, so I think there was that side of it. It was like a pastoral care, but in the context of relationship.
Mm,
And I think that was huge for me, like having someone that I felt like actually truly cared
yeah,
about what I was going through, what I was dealing with, and very much interested in seeing me be the best that I could be.
yeah,
Um, and then through that, finding community for sure was a huge deal because I think when you're building something together with somebody else, when you're on mission together towards a common goal, it like creates a solidarity,
yeah,
right? Especially in a city like Vancouver. Like Vancouver is very transient. People come here for school and then they're gone after a few years. They come here for um like a staycation or whatever. They're
yeah.
like
It's
holiday.
beautiful though. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So people will come
yeah,
for like long-term holiday and you hope they would leave, and our church has had a lot of those people where they'll move from Australia or the other side of the country or from wherever in the world. They'll be here for 2 or 3 years and then they're gone um, back home or doing other things. But in that transientness, I think there's just a beauty of being able to connect with people, find your fit with them, but then also work towards a common goal in the time that you have together.
yeah,
Not every relationship or every community is forever. I think God places certain community and puts you in certain settings for certain
yeah.
areas, seasons of your life, right? And in my context, that's been very true. Is my community has been crucial in kind of encouraging me or believing with me for things that I might not have the strength to believe in, encouraging me in skills and giftings that I probably didn't see. Justin, for
Mm,
example, was a huge part of that. When I met him, I wasn't a designer. I wouldn't have seen myself as a creative.
yeah,
I enjoyed it, but I didn't
yeah,
know anything about it at a professional level or whatever. Um, but there was something about being in community with him where he pulled that out of me, you know.
Mm.
And I think that's the beauty of community. When you're in a community, not only of creatives, but of in any sort of Christian community, in a healthy community, you start believing in each other, right? In a healthy community, if you really have that responsibility of trying to help each other grow
Yeah.
in a fruitful way. And
Yeah.
so I think that for anybody in a church setting, I think that really is the role of community. That's why we say, you shouldn't do these cliches that we hear all the time. We're like, oh, another church cliche, you don't do life alone and all this kind of stuff. Yeah,
It's true.
sure, it's a cliche, but it's true. There's a truth to it.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't do life alone.
Yeah.
You should have friends. You should be investing in other people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you have to be friends with everybody
Yep.
or your community should be everybody. You have to find, I think there's people placed in church communities that just naturally gravitate towards each other. And that's not to be like cliquey or to be exclusive,
Mm.
but that's just the nature of human connection, right?
Yeah.
I, I can't connect with everybody, but at least on the basis of faith, I can connect with most people. But
Yep.
when it comes down to who your core community is, who your covenant friendships are, I think that's a special thing that you naturally find. And I think for me, the best relationships have been found through church.
Yeah.
Friends overseas now that I'm connected with because we spent a year together building church together here. So we've got these stories that even though we're not talking every day, there's just a connectedness there,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Yeah.
I think even bumping into you guys last year, it's kind of evident of that. It's worlds apart, but
Yeah.
there's a commonality there just through church and through our beliefs that links us. So that even though it spans different cultures or whatever the case may be, there's a there's a vested interest that I have in seeing you guys be the best that you can be, and
Yeah.
vice versa. Even when we
Yeah.
had dinner, what was it like 2 weeks ago when I was there?
That's
It was
true.
like, hey, whatever you're going through, we're praying for you, we're believing for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that you're going to get through whatever you're going through. And
Yeah.
there's power in that.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I mean, I'm so grateful for that because I think God just brings people together through their faith, right? And so,
Yeah.
I mean, we have vastly different backgrounds. I'm not even half as cool as you, but yeah, honestly, and yet, like somehow God brings us all together, and it's so special, And so,
Yeah.
I think one of the things too that I am so inspired by is just how you've really gotten into this creative space. And for many people, I think who are listening to, sometimes I think it's hard to find their place, whether is it in church or even in the world, as a creative, but as a Christian too. And maybe you can speak to that a bit. How can the church better support and release creatives into their callings, into their destinies? Because there's a place for them, right? Whether it's in the church, in the kingdom, in the world. And how can churches do that better? Since you are on the other side, right? You are the creative. You are the one who's
Yeah.
experienced it yourself. What can the church do more, or maybe what can the church do to support them better?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, creativity is a funny one because creatives are, they're feelers. They're a very
Yeah.
sensitive group. They are, when you put something out, when you put your heart into making something, a design, a video, whatever, there's like a personal attachment to it. Um, and so I think sometimes in the church space that part gets lost, especially if you're not coming at it from a purely creative point of view. If you're
Mm,
coming at it from an operational point of view or whatever, it's like sometimes churches treat creative as a means to an end.
mm,
Um, which, I understand there's deadlines that need to be met. There's things that need to happen on a Sunday. There's things that need to happen in a given year, whatever the case may be. But I think sometimes creative is treated as a commodity to be traded or to be used within the church context. And I think in a large part, that mindset has led to the current state of creativity in the church, which is creatives just don't want to be involved in church
mm,
because they've had this experience due to some, really cool large churches that are designed for it and all this kind of stuff, kind of burning them out, right?
yeah.
Burning them out, not with the wrong intention or the wrong heart, but just maybe with the wrong application,
Mm,
perchance. But what I've seen is, um, when creativity in a church becomes a commodity, then the person that's behind the creativity often gets ignored or
Mm.
passed over or looked as like, hey, you have a gifting, and it's almost like you owe the church that gift to do something with it, and it becomes like a very transactional type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it's tough to see where the message, like it's almost like a bit of manipulation, almost where the creative might feel like, "Oh, I have to do this,
Mm.
right, in order to be accepted by the community. This is the gift that brings me into community." Um, and so from the flip side of it, I think because I came into the church not as a creative, but grew as a creative within the church context, um, in a what I feel like is a very healthy environment with what Justin created through Vivid. There was a lot of freedom, there was a lot of
Mm.
grace, there was a lot of room to grow because he knew that he wasn't getting some sort of like tenured creative director, graphic designer. He was getting a guy that had tinkered around on Photoshop and was willing to help.
Yeah.
Right. And I think sometimes God does much more with those that are willing and able than those that are talented. And so as I grew in my skill set, um, Justin kind of called me into leadership with creative directing and leading people. And the environment that I was striving to create was less about here's the things that we need to do, and more the environment of who are your friends? Do you have a community here? Before you start creating assets for our church, I want to make sure that you have a small group. I want to make sure that you
Mm.
have friends that you hang out with on
Wow.
Wednesday night or Friday night or Saturday night. And then if that's all there, that's the foundation that I can then build a creative team on because the purpose of church is being accomplished first and foremost,
Yeah.
right? And then out of that overflow of what the community is giving them and what they're getting in being in relationship with each other Monday to Sunday, um, they're able to, or they're actually motivated to serve wholeheartedly,
Yep.
right? And I think working from that perspective rather than this, here's the stuff that we need to get done, and we would love your help in doing it. It's more the direction of we want to make sure that our church is fulfilling the role of a church in your lives first and foremost. Do you have good leaders? Do you have good peers? Do you have, mature voices speaking into your spiritual life? Do you have people around you for when things go sideways or you need prayer or you need help? You need someone to stand in the gap when you feel like you don't have enough faith. Um, Really, the care pieces, all of those care
Yeah.
pieces. Once those are met, I've found that the creative creatives that join our team are way more willing to like, hey, whatever you need, I'm here for.
Yeah, no, that's such a good
Yeah.
thought because you move almost from like transactional to relational, right? And you're saying,
Yeah.
I don't just value you for your gift and for your talent and for
Yeah.
what you can bring. Actually, I value you because of who you are and who God made you
Yeah.
to be. And so I think that's a really big shift in your mindset too, right?
Yeah.
Um, and like, what do you think? What role do creatives or Christian creatives, what role can they play in shaping culture too? I think a lot of times, like even for myself too, like the thing we want to kind of get is we want to impact, right? We want some kind of the
Yeah.
work that we do, the creative stuff that we produce, we want it to produce some kind of impact. But how can we do that? Because I think there's many types of roles now in the creative world. It's not just like production. There's a lot of like social media stuff that's happening too. But
Hmm.
what role do you think Christian creatives can play in shaping culture, in shaping like the way the kingdom is, maybe even bring the message of Jesus, to the people
Yeah.
around them?
Yeah. I think in terms of creatives embracing kind of their purpose within the church, it's important for them to understand the history. I think sometimes we forget our history as Christians.
Mm,
Like a lot of creatives I talk to now that are in church, they're looking at influences outside of church. Like they want to bring the cool influences that they see, they want to bring it into church, which is all good. It's all great stuff. But, the church has always been at the forefront of innovation.
good.
And we tend to forget that. Architecture, the education system, hospitals. If you look at all these great cathedrals that were built and you look at the paintings inside of them, like those are Christian creatives, right?
Yeah.
Michelangelo, Leonardo, the greatest composers of our time, they wrote worship music.
Yeah. The
These great
OGs.
hymns.
Yeah.
Yeah, the symphonies, Beethoven, Mozart. These are Christian composers, um, insanely gifted. But in addition to writing these crazy symphonies, they were writing them for a Christian context and a Christian purpose, right? And then the greatest hymn writers of our times, they're writing that are timeless hymns for our churches. These are great musical masterpieces, and the church has always fostered that. And I think we're in an era where we forget that, or it's easy. It's has been easily forgotten that the church actually leads, and now we're looking at
Yeah.
external influences to lead the church of what's cool. Let's bring that
Yep.
into the church. It's like no, the church is cool. The church
Mm.
doesn't need to be cool. At the
Yep.
core of it all, you know, the church is there to impact society. They're supposed to lead society, and we're in a place where
Good.
we're like receiving from society, and trying to like copy what society tells us is cool rather than being confident and secure in who God says we are and who God says the church is, and really leading from that place rather than following. So we follow trends. And it's cool to be inspired by things that are out there. That's fine, because I think,
Mhm.
whether you're Christian or you're not Christian, your abilities are God given. Whether people want to
Yeah.
embrace that or not doesn't matter, right? And it's fine if they don't want to, if they don't have a relationship with Jesus. Those giftings on their lives are divine giftings. Whether they use them for Christian purposes or worldly purposes,
Yep.
that's a different story altogether. So the inspiration that comes from all this creativity in the world, it's awesome. And
Yeah.
at some level, the creativity is, God ordained. It's a gift from God, and how you choose to use it is what determines whether you are a Christian creative or not, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so all these influences are great, but how do we use that to lead culture rather than just appease culture,
Yeah.
right?
Or let it
So
lead
it's like,
us. Right.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's like, man, we got to be cool. Well, why?
Mm.
Do we want to be cool to attract the right kind of crowd? So we look a certain sort of way. So we feel like we're showcasing that church is relevant and trendy and fits in to modern culture. I mean, the
Mm.
church has always been kind of punk rock, it's been counterculture always.
Yeah.
And just because we're coming out of an era where, I guess you could call it the golden age of America lined up with the golden age of Christianity, it's almost like we forget that Christianity is not guaranteed to be easy. It's not
Yeah.
guaranteed that it's free of persecution,
Good.
right?
Yeah.
I think there's an insulation there in the Western church where we're like, oh yeah, this is, you know, we can live our lives freely, but really, um, there is a there are active forces against Christians always,
Yep.
whether that's
Yep.
in the Western world or in other areas where the church is not so globally accepted, right? I think we are reaping the benefits, and we're kind of seeing some of the tension now more than ever of a Christian society based on Christian foundations
Mm.
operating in a world that wants to reject Christ.
Yeah.
And so I think with creatives and Christian creatives, they have the opportunity to reach people in ways that, a pastor from a pulpit can't,
Yeah.
to
So good.
amplify the message, right? And to really activate their giftings to communicate. At the end of the day, creativity is just communication.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's another avenue to communicate with people that the church in theology might not be able to reach right away, or the church in ministry may not be able to reach right away. But if someone comes across, a great video or a great song or whatever the creative medium is, it could just pique their interest in something that could change their lives forever. And I
Yeah.
think we have to lead with that, with knowing that what we're creating is supposed to be leading culture and resetting culture rather than appeasing what's out there or trying to strive to be relevant. I think, Christianity is relevant. The Bible is how many millennia old,
Yeah.
and is as relevant today as the day that it was written.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that just shows the permanence of it. And so I think creatives need to, in their roles in church, they need to be proud of that heritage, first of all, and also be secure in it. It's like what you
Mm.
create, there's a security in you being who God has called you to be. And I think the insecurities that a lot of creatives struggle with is because we tend to lose focus of that. Is like, oh, God actually has told me exactly who I am. And the more
Mm.
you can lean into that, that identity, the more you can activate your creativity and really freely give it away because you understand that it's a gift from God that you
Yep.
have been called to give away to certain. Now, that's not to say that, everyone's got to make a paycheck, right? We have to be able to earn and live. And so those gifts are also there for you to be able to earn a living, provide for your family, provide for yourself, whatever that case may
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
But it's never meant to be only that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so good. Yeah. We serve a creative God. God
Yeah.
himself is creative. I mean, he's the one
Yeah.
who created the world, right? And so
Yeah.
if he's given us that gift, then we need to, I guess, lead with that and not allow culture to lead us, right? And that we
Yeah.
should decide, hey, I want to lead like with what God
Yeah.
has given to me, the gifts that God has given to me. I'm going to
Yeah.
lead that. And I think that's such a powerful thought to have. Well, maybe we can end with this. You've got quite a bit of interaction, I think, with Singapore and even a bit with our creative, I think world, especially in the church context. And
Yeah.
what would you, what would be that one challenge maybe that you can give to Christian creatives in Singapore, specific to our context, in order to really live out this gift for the kingdom, for God? What would it be?
That's a tough one. One challenge is always tough.
Well, you can give 10 if you want.
Oh man, I don't know if I have 10 either, but yeah, I think ultimately, I don't think a lot of people see it this way, but we put a pressure on ourselves to be creative. We have to create something out of nothing. I don't think we are that innovative and awesome, personally. Not that's not meant to be depressing or sound like, anti-motivational, but as you were saying, the only creative that there is God. The only creation event that has ever happened to make something out of nothing has come from God.
Mm,
So that should take the pressure off of all creatives, right? Because everything that needs to be created has already been created by the creator.
yeah,
So what we're here to do is really be his hands and feet
good.
and take the creation that he's already given us, all the inspiration he's already given us. He's created nature, he's created, technology, he's given us the ability to think in very complex creative ways. We just need to steward that well. So
Good.
my challenge would be, don't feel the pressure to create, feel the pressure to curate and to
Love it.
and to grow in your inspiration so that you can actually lead people into a place of worship. You can lead people into a place where they can have an encounter with God.
Mhm.
Creativity is not just creating a poster. It's not just creating a video. It's creating an environment. It's trying to break down barriers. It's trying to communicate something in a way that other people can understand easily. But it should come, like, the challenge would be like, don't feel the pressure to create something from scratch. Like, it's not on your shoulders,
Mm,
right? It's not, I don't feel the weight of the world to communicate or create something. I actually feel like it's a joy to be able to repurpose what God's already put out there in the world,
wow, so good.
and steward that through my giftings and steward my gifting and then put that on show for somebody else to have an encounter, or to experience God in a way they never thought they could. There's been so many stories of people being like, how'd you find our church? It's like Instagram. Almost everyone that finds a
Love it.
church is through Instagram or through an invite from a friend, because that's all we focus on. It's like, let's just focus on one thing, do it well, and trying to get people to church. But I don't feel the pressure of, like, if we don't create the most amazing reel in the world, people won't show up on Sunday. Right? I
Mm,
think God's still going to do what he's going to do, and he's going to use the gifts and talents that you willingly lay down at his feet to kind of create an impact. And so those are the things, like, just challenge all creatives, and I think it's kind of cross cultural, not just Singapore, but everywhere else is like, but maybe specifically Singapore in the sense that there's a lot of pressure to perform, right? I think
mhm.
that's a cultural value. It was for me coming from an Asian context as well.
Yeah.
It's like, there actually, God has zero pressure to perform. Um, None of what you're doing with your giftings is performative. It's actually
Mm,
should just be an overflow of your spirit, really. Your understanding of who you are in Christ should overflow in the gifts and how you use them.
good.
Um, and so that would be my challenge to creators, is like, can you really embrace the entirety of who God has called you to be and the gifts that he's given you, and bring all of those together to serve him, not to serve yourself, not to serve your Instagram followers, but to serve him first
Good.
and foremost, and his church, and build his church. Because there's really
Yeah.
no greater purpose that a Christian creative can activate or be a part of, apart from building the local church.
Yeah, so good. Well, thank you so much, Sam. I think your voice is so important for so many creatives all around the world, not just in Singapore. And, I'm sure those who are listening will be really encouraged and inspired by your story too. And thank you so much for listening to this episode. And I hope this conversation has helped you to live full.